Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Mueller from Sioux City PD in Iowa, 30 years in law enforcement, the last 9 years as chief of police. He has actively worked to improve the wellness resources of his department to ensure the well-being and longevity of his officers and staff. Really looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the show, Chief Mueller. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Paige. Happy to be here.
Of course. No, I'm looking forward to it. So, I wanted to first give a little bit of background, anything that you can share about yourself or your career. And then there's some topics in here that I actually think are really interesting and different than what we've talked about before on this podcast. So, I'm looking forward to it. But give us a little bit of background on you first.
Well, not all that interesting, but I never sought to be in law enforcement. I was going to teach, of all things, art. So in college, that was my goal. And I took a criminal justice class and had some experiences in college that kind of changed my path. I think things happen for a reason, and something steered me towards this profession. And I'm very thankful. I've never looked back. The first agency that I ever worked for is the agency that I'm still at today in Sioux City. And one of the things, the great things about law enforcement is the variety. You can do so many different things during the course of your career. And I've been blessed to work in every aspect of this: patrol, investigations, tactical operations, community policing. Everywhere within the agency, it provided a lot of variety and a lot of interest. And this is a job that, it's a thankless job, but it's one of those jobs that if you go home and you really consider, you can look back and you can say, I made the world a safe place. It's incredibly fulfilling. And I see every day in this job as a gift. And, and recently, to kind of stay on topic with why we're here is wellness. I mean, 30 years of this job, and for any person, a year of this job, you talk about how many traumatic events a law enforcement officer is exposed to in comparison to a regular citizen, and the cumulative effects that it can have on personnel. And it's just, I'm just gratified that, probably for the second half of my career, wellness became more of a focus. When I began my career, I don't think it was. I think most people in law enforcement was kind of a suck it up buttercup.
Right.
And, while that's unfortunate, it also has some benefits, because I think mental toughness is important in this profession. But it's just a little bit about me. I have a wife of 25 years and a teenage son, and I am getting closer and closer to closing the book on my law enforcement career and doing something else soon. So.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing. I wanted to ask you, the conversation about the environment within law enforcement right now, where everyone is kind of jumping ship, and you're seeing a lot of lateraling and you're seeing a lot of movement within the organization. Being that you have been with the same organization now for 30 years, how were you able to, I guess, quote unquote, water your own grass and find that fulfillment within the organization that you started without feeling like you have to jump around or that the grass is greener on the other side?
Well, you hate to paint any generation or any individuals with a broad brush, but I was kind of brought up under that grass isn't always greener, and having that organizational loyalty that where you started your career, is where you wanted to finish it. And I think that's less and less common. I think and again, I'm not throwing stones, but I think we're in a little bit more of a disposable society, a little bit more instant gratification. And so, as law enforcement leaders, we need to combat the fact that our folks are sometimes wondering, is the grass greener? And so that's where it's important to develop a healthy organizational culture, to do a good job of mentoring and giving opportunity to your young people so that they feel a sense of fulfillment, so that they don't wonder, is the grass greener? And so, as important as recruitment is, as agencies are having great difficulty with, retention is also part of it. We don't want to give our folks a reason to wonder if the grass is greener somewhere else. And so, there's a lot that goes into that, not just the organizational culture, but the benefits the organization offers. What do we do to, build personal satisfaction into the job? How do you reward good work so that people feel recognized? How do you empower people to be involved in the decision making of the organization? There's so many things that I think you can deploy to combat that. If your personnel feel like they're a part of something special, I really feel like they're more apt to stay around long term and remain in the agency and not migrate either to another agency or another profession.
Mm. And if you could maybe give, because you already gave a few like ideas in there, and there are a lot of chiefs that I talk to that struggle with this. They're talking about culture and they're asking those questions. How do we build a healthy culture? How do we build a foundation of wellness? How do we retain our people? Are there three top things that you could give as, maybe a foundation or a starting point for any other chief out there who is really focusing on culture right now that has been successful for you guys, that has been really well received in building that healthy culture?
I could try. I think like a city administrator will think in terms of, well, let's offer these folks more benefits or let's give them a sign-on bonus. I don't think that's what keeps people in the seats. I think that job satisfaction is a huge part of that, and that can come a number of ways. It's that you have a variety of assignments that people can go through the agency and do different things so that they feel fulfilled throughout their time in the organization. I think another big piece is recognition. When I took over this agency, we did have an awards program, but I wanted to elevate that. I wanted to make sure that every year we spent a lot of effort and time into recognizing and awarding our personnel, and that meant, if that meant giving a medal, written commendations, or me just simply writing a card to an individual for good work, that they felt appreciated, and that there's a lot of sacrifices for spouses that are in law enforcement, and for them to attend an awards ceremony in the summer and see their husband or wife up there receiving an award kind of helps them understand why they make all these sacrifices for their personnel. And then just that, how do you set that culture? What do you do? I mean, and I think there's so much to it. I think that you have a disciplined agency, you set a bar and you set expectations. I don't think you do any favors to your personnel by just saying, hey, show up at work and it's going to be great. No, let's show up at work and achieve, and we will recognize you. You'll have opportunity, that you're a part of a disciplined agency, that everybody's held to the same standards, that you see the value in, and for us it's police community relationships. It's interesting, we had protests, during the George Floyd protests around the country. We experienced that too, and one of the things that I think kept our folks going was there was not an open space in the hall. We had people, we had school children writing little letters of support, doing drawings. We had Gatorade. We had food. We had people constantly coming to the station to express their appreciation during a difficult time. And those are things that take years to develop. Is that the agency culture is not just internal, it's that you understand that the public is part of your policing, and you invite them in and you develop those relationships. And what's interesting is that you then work with a public that is, and some of them, they talk about the silent majority. It's that silent majority that really supports their law enforcement officers and their public safety officers, and having those relationships in place so that when things happen nationally, the officers in your department say, well, that doesn't happen here because our citizens appreciate us and we appreciate them. And it's not an us versus them organizational culture where, you're going out just to get the bad guys. For us, years of doing community policing builds a lot of empathy. It builds empathy that the officers have empathy for the people they serve. And in turn, the citizens that they serve have empathy for them. And it just creates a more supportive environment. And there's so many little ways. You asked three. I think I tried to throw out three, but there's so many. I mean, just even the branding of your agency. What do your uniforms look like? What do your squad cars look like? Do you do, coins, commemorative patches? What do you do to convince your folks and to remind them that this is important work and you're appreciated, and a sense of pride and belonging is so important to try to develop that in what is an exceedingly difficult profession. So there's a lot of ways to answer that. I hope I kind of touched on some for you, but
That was perfect. And the word that I wrote down that I think kept coming up as you were talking was a sense of appreciation and feeling like you're valued. And I've said this before on the podcast, but I relate this to a very simple example because I think we can all relate to this. You know, how many of us have been in a romantic relationship where you don't feel like you're valued? And imagine if you were in a romantic relationship and someone just told you all the things you did wrong. And that was all they did was they were just like, you didn't take out the trash, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you did this wrong, and you never ever felt appreciated or valued. Would you stay in that relationship very long? Probably not, right? You'd be like, I'm not really appreciated here. I'm going to go, find someone who appreciates the work that I do. And I think that we can apply that within, our work environment too. How can we make sure that, and I love that you focus on rewarding good behavior and good work and setting standards and then having awards or rewards for those types of things. Because again, I think it's easy for us to focus sometimes on the negative or the things that go wrong, but for you to be like, hey, we're going to recognize the good work too, I think is really important, especially when it comes to retention and having people want to stay in that environment for a long time.
yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have to be big. The award ceremony is obviously for us is yearly is a manifestation. I'm going to step out of frame for a second here, but um, one of the things, probably one of the first things that I did when I became the chief was I had these note cards made with my name on them, and they're just empty.
Yeah.
But it was for a specific purpose. I'm not a political person, but I'm aware of certain political figures that I appreciated and admired when I was younger. And one of the common threads, and one of them, Ronald Reagan actually had a book of his handwritten notes published. And he took the time. I mean, guy's president of the United States, and he took the time to write so many people. And while awards are great and printed out commendation letters are nice, not everything merits that. And so whenever I hear about good work of an officer, of a citizen, I put pen to paper and I send them a personal note. And it's one of the many ways that I have an opportunity to actually recognize that and allow people to be valued. And I've had a lot of people come back to me. I've seen these cards pinned in their cubicles, and I didn't think it meant that much. But I've had a handful of people that came back to me and told me how much it meant that I did that, and I'm glad it had meaning to them. But we should never be too busy to recognize good work. And the only break in that chain might be that not every person believes in that. So if I don't hear about it, I can't recognize that, and I wish I could change that. But to me, one of the best parts of my day is when I can stop doing administrative tasks, sit down and write a few of these, and send them to my personnel, a citizen, something like that, to let them know that what they did is recognized and appreciated. And I hope that plays into the much larger picture of that sense of belonging and that organizational culture, that if you come here, you're appreciated. And I think any chief can do that. Any chief can, again, it's something that takes so little effort, but might mean something to somebody who's maybe wondering, is this for me? They never see the good work I do. And then out of nowhere, they get one of these, and suddenly, it's like we talk about, filling people's bucket or emptying it out. And this is maybe one way we can fill people's bucket.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I heard something the other day that I thought was really interesting, and it kind of falls in line with the filling up your bucket. It was a story about someone walking with a cup of coffee, and they get like bumped, and they spill their coffee. And he was like, why did you spill your coffee? And he goes, well, because there was coffee in the cup. And the whole idea was whatever's in your cup is going to pour out. So if there's water in it, water is going to pour out. If there's orange juice in it, orange juice is going to pour out. And so if we take that internally and we think about our internal cup, what are we filling our internal cup up with? Is it good stuff or is it bad stuff? Because when we get rattled and we get bumped and we get nudged, what is going to pour out? And if we're filling ourselves up with positivity, then when we get bumped, that's going to spew out, right? But if it's negativity, the reverse is also true. And so I liked this idea of like, what are we filling ourselves up with? Are we filling ourselves up with gratitude and appreciation? Are we filling up other people with, gratitude and appreciation, or is it negativity? Because when they're out, and you talked about the community, what is the product in the community? If they get, nudged a little bit, is the positivity going to come out or the negativity? So how can we fill the cup up with as much good stuff as possible? So I thought I kind of like went in line, and I thought that was a really interesting like way that they put that. I was like, yeah, like what's in our cup? Is it good or is it bad?
No, I agree. I agree. And you can kind of control that. And I think one of the things that gets discussed a lot is morale. Mm-hmm. And chiefs and command staff often take the hit on morale. And I understand why. We should be giving the credit to the good work to our officers, but we also take the blame for anything bad that happens in an agency. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I think back to when I was a patrolman, and my morale, my sense of well-being had nothing to do with what the chief or command staff did. They were so far away from me. I didn't work beside them every day. Number one, it's what you decide. And I saw this as a young patrolman. I saw this job as a gift. I loved every minute of it. I was helping people. I was chasing guys down on foot. I was making arrests. I was doing good for the community. But I think that morale is more dictated by the people that you're surrounded by, or at least can be negatively impacted or positively impacted. And so when you deal with that organizational culture piece as a chief or a command staff member, to some degree, you can try to impact morale. You can try to make sure that all of your folks have the training, the support, that they know that their command staff cares about them. But at some point in time, it's the peers. What's your peer group like? Who do you work next to? What's their attitude? And if their attitude's bad, and I've worked with people with bad attitudes, but it wasn't my attitude. And satisfaction is internal. And that's what's unfortunate to me is too much. And again, I'm not going to try to paint generations with broad brushes, but I think a lot of it is nowadays for young people is, make me happy. Mm. If you just do this for me, I'll be happy. If you just do these things. And it's like, it's hard to tell some people, no, the only one that's going to make you happy is you. And the only one that's going to find fulfillment is truly you. And I think it comes in at exactly what you said, kind of that half empty, half full. I know we're going to the glass analogy, but that's kind of part of it is what kind of a person do you choose to be? Are you a negative person? Are you a positive person? Do you let one misstep ruin your day? Or do you take that misstep, learn from it, or push it to the rear and say, you know what, I'm not going to let this misstep or this setback impact me and my mood and my moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree with you. And the word that you said that stood out to me was it's a choice. And we have to take accountability for ourselves, and we have to understand that no one can make us happy or healthy. Or wealthy. That's someone else said that to me. No one can make you happy, healthy, or wealthy. You have to do those things for yourself. You have to focus on your own wellness. You have to take action. You have to focus on your own happiness. For money, like if you're investing it, it's on you. No one's going to do those things for you. And so I think I've been there before where I blamed the world for all of my problems. And there comes a point, hopefully, in everyone's life where you have that kind of aha moment where you're like, whoa, okay, it's on me. And of course you want to put yourself in environments that are going to help to set you up for success. And to your point, you want to create an organization that is that, jumping off point for everyone to feel like they can be successful. But at the end of the day, we all have to take action in our own lives. And so I do want to talk a little bit about wellness and the things that you guys are doing organizationally. But one of the things that you said earlier was having a sense of mental toughness. And when you and I, connected offline, there's this idea that there's a need for tactical resiliency. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for you guys?
Well, and that was it was actually Jennifer Prohaska is a mental health provider out of Kansas City that caters to law enforcement. And this is an endorsement, but she spoke at a conference that I was at. And it was a good way to put resiliency, tactical resiliency. And the way I would simply see that is every experience that you have in law enforcement, we talked about those cumulative things. And the best example I ever heard from a therapist that I was saying was that rocks in the backpack. Everything that we go through can be that little, can be a pebble or a big rock that can weigh us down. That you put those into your backpack, and you have to be able to take those out. Well, how do we teach our folks to make sure that we're every bad experience they go through, every the first dead baby call they go through, the first fatal accident, that all these things that they see in their careers, how do you make sure, or how do you teach them tactical resiliency? And to me, it's about a lot of things. You don't like to use the suck it up buttercup, but that is, to some degree, that is something we have lost in law enforcement. We do need to take care of people's feelings, but we also need to teach them to be tough, that the things they go through should be expected. And when they have that first, dead baby call, and they're new parents themselves, that they can go to that, and that they can diffuse with a supervisor, and their supervisor or their peer understands tactical resilience, and they can say, yeah, we got a job to do. It's a good thing that we came to this. And so that instead of being things that tear you down, those are building blocks for, maybe let's say that just a hairy situation, a pursuit, a use of force. And when the incident is over, that you take a breath and say, because of training and teamwork, I just got through that, which tells me that if I deal with an even harder situation moving forward, I'll be okay. And so instead of focusing on, that was scary, I don't know if I want to go through that again. Instead, it's, what? We went through that. I made it through. I did my job, and I could do it again in that situation. Is that resiliency is just that building up, and to some degree, and it's unfortunate, but we have to become a little bit callous to the things that we see, because there's just too much weight to that. Is you need to be able to separate work and home so that you don't carry those with you to your home life. And so part of that is that this is a job. It's like a surgeon. I mean, surgeons every day have people filleted out on their operating tables, and that's normalcy. I mean, that's what we expect them to do. And the same thing with us. We see people at their worst. We see these horrible scenes. We see death every day. And being able to mentally get to the point where you go through these, and every one that you go through, you're toughening yourself up, you're better at it, and you're building some resiliency so that when these terrible things happen, you can put them into perspective. You can compartmentalize, or whatever you want to say somebody's coping mechanisms are, hopefully not alcohol or substance abuse, things like that, but that your coping mechanisms are, okay, this is work. This is what I do. I'm going to compartmentalize this. I'm going to be okay. We made it through. Everybody takes a breath. You debrief if you need to. But that instead of just treating trauma after trauma, like, somebody goes from a bad scene, boy, that was really bad, and just almost just seeking comfort over that, we are kind of turning that a little bit and saying, okay, it's all right. We made it through that. That was rough. The next call is waiting for us. And so, there has to be a balance. We need to cater to people's needs. We need to, meet their emotional, physical, spiritual. We need to provide them with the resources to be okay. But at the same time, we need to toughen them up. And I think there is a certain lack if you just focus on the oh, that was terrible what you saw. If you don't follow up with the toughness piece, I think you're pushing people down a negative path. If everything is a negative experience and people can't compartmentalize and put things in perspective, I think you're going to lose people. I think people are going to have a much longer career. I think they're going to do much better if you have a mix of that. You respond to them in times of need, but at the same time you build their, and I just like the term, their tactical resiliency. You make them tougher.
I think that the thing that you kept saying that I agree with is like, how do we get people through it? Because that's the goal, right? Is to get to the other side and be okay. And something that I've heard, I've had a lot of conversations with chiefs about this, how there are maybe some, and I won't like call anyone out, obviously, but there are maybe some providers that almost like want to keep you in that loop of hurting, of like revisiting the pain over and over without any sort of solution on how to get to the other side of it. And I've talked to a few chiefs that have said that they had people dropping like flies because whatever provider it was that they were using was like, you got to leave, like you got to leave the job. Like, that's terrible. That was awful, instead of like, hey, to your point, yes, we recognize that was really hard. How can we get you through it so that you can stay on the job and you can grow from it and learn and, and maybe even be better because of it. And we see this a lot, right? It's like this like looping effect. And you see when people stay stuck in a situation and they never ever improve. And so the idea is, how can we get people to the other side of it? I am not a fan of keeping people sick. I'll put that in quotes. And I was actually at a presentation one time, and there was a doctor who said, it was like a PT doctor. And they said that they intentionally, I had a really big problem with this. They intentionally didn't help people right away and didn't improve their pain right away because they wanted them to keep coming back, because they wanted the money of them, continuing to come back. And I was like, that is not the goal. The goal is not to keep people in pain. The goal is not to keep people sick. The goal is to get people better as quickly as possible. And what are those resources and things that we can do to get people back, stronger and better than ever? That's the goal. And when that doctor said that, I was like, there's some unethical things going on right now where the goal is to make more money and to keep people sick. So I agree with you. It's like, how can we get people to the other side? And how can we make sure that they can continue to do the job long term?
I would agree. I think when you're saying that, I thought of chiropractors, and I go to mine when I'm having an issue, and a couple of sessions, I'm feeling better, and he's just like, "Do you want to make another appointment next week?" No, okay. Well, if you feel this again, give me a call. Otherwise, and he's always very good about that. We'll work on it until you feel like we've done enough good for you. And I think that from the therapy standpoint, that should be part of it too, is that you have some control over that. If obviously there's mandated things that at times we mandate people attend, but I agree, you shouldn't be in a perpetual cycle. At some point in time, a therapist should be able to give you the tools, and then you should be deploying those tools. It shouldn't just be this codependent relationship, in my opinion. And I'm in no position to comment on that. Don't have a degree and in it, but I would agree with you in that it shouldn't be a dependency cycle. It should be about getting back out there and getting the right tools. And I found that therapy is oftentimes about you working with your therapist, and your therapist determining that you're using appropriate coping tools to get through things that you have. We always, as cops with our gear belts, we always talk about adding tools to the tool belt. Well, I think there's mental health tools that you can add to your tool belt too. And if officers, and not just officers, staff, communications operators, anybody in the public safety field needs to have the appropriate tools to deal with the things that are thrown at us.
100%. And you and I talked offline, and I know earlier you said you don't want to paint a broad stroke on, generations, which we know is happening. And I feel like always happens when there's the older generation versus the new. But how do you adjust? I know that you guys are focusing on, a 360-degree approach when it comes to wellness, and you're really trying to, set up everybody for success. But how do you adjust to the younger generation? What are you seeing that, maybe they're needing or that they're looking for that's different than what, some of the previous generations were looking for?
Well, it's, and again, without generalizing, it's kind of what we're seeing in younger people is we live in an instant gratification society. So, I mean, a lot are coming in, and right off the bat, they're like, "What are you guys going to do for me? I want my vacation up front. I want to get to day shift sooner. And maybe it's just it's a tough job market, and I think a lot of, and it might be a side effect of that, is a lot of jobs are, hey, work remotely, hey, we'll let you do this, hey, we got a nap room at, all these things that never used to be offered are now offered. And so maybe it's that people feel like they have a choice, but it's just different. Now, I can say that from a perspective, young people are probably more in touch with their feelings. I think they're more apt to seek help, to use mental health resources, whereas we and the older generation are a little more leery of that. A little, mental toughness is kind of part of it, sometimes to our detriment. But the incoming workforce has different expectations. They, rather than, hey, what can I do for the agency? It's a little bit more of a, what can you do for me? What services can you provide to me? And I've heard more than a few times from veteran officers, why are we doing this for the new generation? Why are we, giving them, why are we catering to the people in the process of testing with us by showing them how to do the tests and having meetings and helping them along? And, we didn't get that. And it's kind of one of those things that, yeah, well, we didn't get it, I guess, because we didn't need it then, but that doesn't mean that that's not something that we have to offer. Some of it's job market related. Some of it is just the mentality. I look at my son who's 18 and I want to tell myself that he's like, wow, look at all these things that he has. He has things that I didn't have. He's got an easy path. But then the flip side is you look at, social media and cyberbullying and all these things that I never had to contend with. And then I start thinking about it. I'm like, no, he's got it in some ways. He's, got everything materially he needs. But from a standpoint of emotionally and the way that people communicate, I had it a lot easier than him. And so we have to understand that the people that, are my son's age are entering this profession and, or slightly older than my son are entering this profession with a whole different view of the world, a whole different style of communication. And we need to adjust to that. We're, as administrators, I've met resistance from my own staff on that. And I just have to say, it's like, well, we need to fill the seats and we need to find good people. And you might not like that we're doing these things for them, but it is the profession and that is the generation. And if it gets good people into these roles, which is all any of us want, is I would assume that anybody working the streets wants to work beside somebody that they can count on, somebody that will be reliable, intelligent, mentally fit, physically fit to do the job, all these things that we expect. That's what we're trying to get in the seat. So if an adjustment to our philosophy and onboarding facilitates that, then that's what we need to do.
Yeah. I used to, and I don't know if this comes with age or, maturity, but I used to look at other people and I remember being so judgmental if someone wasn't like me or didn't need the things that I needed or needed things that I didn't need. And what I mean by that is, I think we all have our own perspectives on things. And what I learned over time is just because something doesn't impact me doesn't mean it's not going to impact somebody else. Just because I don't need something doesn't mean someone else doesn't need something. And I think we have to, at some point, zoom out a little bit and have that understanding that not everyone is like us and everyone has different lived experiences. To your point, you're right. Like, I didn't grow up with social media. I don't know what that's like as a kid growing up with that, and what your perspective on the world is as a young person, because I grew up in the 1900s and I am old as dirt, apparently. And so I don't know what that's like. And so I think at some point we have to understand the intricacies of each individual person and each individual lived experience and understand that not everybody is like us or needs the things that we need. And so I appreciate that you have that understanding of like, hey, like it's a different generation, there's different things going on. And, just because I didn't need something doesn't mean that it's not needed. You had said to me that it's important to recognize impediments to wellness throughout a police organization. What did you mean by that? What are those impediments?
It's having, being able to recognize, I mean, having the right people in the right spots, having supervisors, peers, setting the organizational culture that it's okay to seek help, anything that would serve as a barrier to seeking help. I mean, I went through my own personal experiences where I'd gone, my entire career without needing anything, without seeking mental health assistance. And it was just a time where, I mean, my wife had gotten cancer for the second time. My son was having issues. My father was dying of pancreatic cancer. We were having protests. It was a time where there was nowhere to turn in my life, where I had a sense of peace. And it was just what it was. And I finally decided that I needed help and talk to somebody. Well, one of the things that I did was that next year, as we were improving our wellness program, I went to all of our what we call basic skills school, and it's biannually. We have we have about a month worth of training where we rotate all of our staff, our sworn staff, through. And I went to that and I told that story, and it was just because I wanted to make sure that I was doing all I can to demystify asking for help. That it's okay when you get to that point, and that, hey, look, I'm using the services. Please remember there are these for you. These are here for you. I took one of our new chaplains along, and I wanted them to know that what the chaplains were there for. And, it was, as an organization, I think, as much as I said tactical resiliency was important, that can't override it. It can't be tactical resiliency or resiliency to the point where it's nothing but suck it up, buttercup. It's nothing but, rub a little dirt on it. You'll be fine. You have to have mechanisms in place, and you have to have to set a culture that people feel free to use those resources, and that they're not going to be stigmatized for doing that. This is a tough profession, and I do want tough people. I'm sorry, but if you're offended very easily, if seeing traumatic things is going to make you crumble, this is not your job. You cannot. I think I've always kind of had a belief that police officers are probably hardwired from birth. That you are wired that stress and all these things, that you can put that aside in moments of need and you can do the job. Or that you can see this badness every day, but you can still go home and then enjoy the time that you have with your new baby, or playing catch with your kids or something like that. So impediments could be anything that stops people from using what's available to them to their own benefit. And or just organizationally, do you have them? That would be an impediment. If all an agency has is a CISM team, and okay, after we have a critical incident, we'll do our stress debriefing, and then we all go back to duty. Well, some people might need more to that. Are we, our first line supervisors, when they go to a bad accident scene and they got half of their team there who just witnessed a horrific, bad, fatal accident, are they diffusing with them? Hey, you okay? You want to talk about it? That was a rough one. I haven't seen that there are mechanisms in place, and that we're addressing those, and that we're recognizing those. But it has to be organization wide. We can have all the resources in the world. But if that organizational culture we've talked about several times is not there, and it's not, you don't vilify those people that use those resources, or tease them, or you know, that can be a barrier. So that's that's just something that has to be recognized by each individual agency, and whenever possible, as administrators, uh, our primary job, besides taking care of our folks, should be removing barriers so that they can be successful.
I think something really interesting that you said, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this is what I heard you say, is that you can be vulnerable and resilient. You can say, hey, I need to talk to someone. Something did impact me. And you can also show up and be strong and resilient and do the job. And I think that sometimes we think that only one can exist. That if you're vulnerable, that means that you're not resilient or strong. In order to be, resilient and strong, you can't be vulnerable. And I think that two things can exist at once.
Oh yeah, I mean, and police officers are as good as anyone at shifting gears, because you might have one call for service where you're chasing a bad guy and tackle him, and the fight's on, and you get scraped up, bruised, injured. And then your next call for service is a call with a child victim who you have to show some tenderness to. So, you have to be able to shift gears. You cannot go through your career as this one face. Police officers need to be chameleons. They need to be able to change their bearing and their approach based on the suspect, witness, victim, average citizen that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so, you can't be one-dimensional. I think successful officers are not only great communicators, but they're empathetic people. And I'll admit that sometimes the empathy has got to be fake empathy. I mean, you could have empathy fatigue if you go and absorb everybody's problems, but you need to be able to show some empathy to the people that you serve. And it's interesting, the difference. We've had complaints about officers that are phenomenal officers, but are just they show up, they're somewhat monotone, and they do everything right. And the perception of the citizen is that they were rude.
Mm.
And it's simply because, that officer maybe wasn't as good as, reaching in a little bit, showing some vulnerability to a citizen during a time where they're incredibly vulnerable. So, it's just interesting, and there's value. I mean, some of those things you can't teach, and these officers are doing extremely good work. But sometimes it's the perfect storm too, where you have a citizen who really needs somebody who can emote a lot of empathy, and they don't get that person, and then he was horrible, she was horrible, and they did absolutely everything by the book, did a phenomenal job on the call for service, did a proper investigation, but it's just a feeling, and so again, we as chameleons, we need to have that, strike that balance between, being that hard, driven officer, and then that empathetic, I'm a dad too, when you're dealing with a kid.
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting because earlier we talked about culture, right? And I think that everyone can agree that we all want to feel seen and valued and appreciated and taken care of. And then you think about the community. And to your point, it sounds to me like in certain situations, that's how they want to feel too. They want to feel seen and valued, and they want to feel that compassion and, as that they're taken care of, or taken care of. And so sometimes I think we have to remind ourselves, treat people like you want to be treated. If you want those things, if you want people to pour into you, how can you also pour into others? Because they want those same things. And so it's hard. I say this time and time again, I think you guys have the hardest job in the world. It's very hard, very multidimensional, a lot of different hats, a lot of different things you have to do and see. But I think sometimes if we can look at it from different perspectives, it makes things a little bit easier to show up in a way that people are going to feel like you care.
Sure. And how do you teach? I mean, I know what we refer to it now as emotional intelligence, but how do you teach that? And how could you ever hold any person accountable that doesn't have a high emotional intelligence, but does their job absolutely picture perfect by the book, but just again doesn't emote that humanity that maybe somebody needs at the time. So I mean,
Yeah.
you hope that people develop that. I think a lot of people understand and as they go through their career realize, I mean, I hate to use the phrase you catch more flies with honey, but that they'll have more successful interactions when they can show empathy to the appropriate person. But again, that's a really important skill, is that emotional intelligence, to know how your words can impact somebody, how you say things is just as important as the lines delivered. That you could say the same exact thing, but just change it up slightly with your tone, and it might be the difference between a citizen making a complaint against you and a citizen thanking you for you writing them a ticket. It's something as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we could have an entire podcast on emotional intelligence and how you teach that. And you are not the first person who has asked that question. I think a lot of chiefs are asking that same question. But we are going to run out of time. So I do want to ask our final question, and that is for the younger generation. What words of wisdom would you pass on to the younger men and women who are entering into this career that, maybe you wish you would have known 30 years ago, or something that's helped you along the way that you want to pass on to them?
Just that this is a gift. I mean, I'm reaching the end of my career, and I still look back and I can't imagine a life that I could have lived with more meaning than this. I grew up in this community, left and came back for this job. And I think in every day that I work down the streets, every day that I do this job, I look at it as an opportunity to thank the community that allowed me to grow up in this community. And, when you're allowed to do that, it's a gift. It's a gift to do this job, but we also have to remind ourselves that we're public servants, that we have a lot of power and ability. We can take people's freedom. I mean, we can do all these things that are very heavy, that impact people's lives significantly. And if utilized right, if your moral compass is pointed in the right direction, and you understand what a gift this is, it's going to be an amazing career. So I look at the young officers that we're hiring now, and I envy them. I give them administer their ethical oath when they're being sworn in, and I look at them in this courtroom that I was sworn in, 30 years ago, and I think of what a great adventure they've got ahead of them. So if I'm saying anything to the young people, it's that stick to it. This is the most incredible profession I could have ever imagined being a part of. It's a blessing. It's a gift. Is it hard? Absolutely. But what worth doing isn't hard. And this is one of those things that when you retire someday and you look back and think, how many lives did I save? How many lives did I positively impact, or get somebody on the right path, or make sure that somebody got home okay? I mean, those are all really meaningful things. And in law enforcement, when you do pull the plug and you end your career, you'll never know. You'll never have an even grasp of how many people you probably positively impacted. Thousands, thousands and thousands of people that your intervention during that period of time made a difference in their lives. So I just, for those people that don't chase the money, this is a profession that, while I think it pays well, I think has tremendous satisfaction. And anybody that's thinking about this should definitely go down this path. And again, I haven't regretted a second of it. If you could ask me tomorrow, we're going to rewind the clock. You're going to be 30 years younger. Do you want to start again as a rookie officer? I'd say yes. Put me in. So that's just the way I feel about it. I'm a flawed person. I do the best that I can. I'm not the best leader, but I think leadership is about learning every day. You self-examine, and that's another thing, is you should never get tired of turning the microscope on yourself and saying, where could I get better? But again, it's a gift, and that's the way I look at it. And no regrets, and I look forward to seeing the next generation come into the profession to replace me.
Thank you. Chief Mueller, thank you so much for your time coming on here today and talking about wellness and resiliency and giving your words of wisdom. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.